to the meeting of the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee on Wednesday, the 11th of November. This is a virtual meeting. If we could go straight into the meeting agenda. First, are there any, Carla, any apologies?
I've got no apologies, Chair.
Any colleagues, are there any declarations of interest? I'm not seeing any hands up, so I will take it that there are none. There is no chairman's report. There are no, as far as I know, there are no urgent items. Could I just check that with Carla and Daniel? Do either of you have any urgent items to bring forward?
No, nothing to bring forward, Chair.
Thank you. Right. If we move to agenda item 4, public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22. Any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, can you confirm, please, colleagues, whether you are content with the minutes of the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee meeting, which was held on the 9th of September. Those minutes have been circulated. Any comments or queries about those? No, we're all content. Can I see a show of hands? That's everybody. Thank you. So that's unanimous. We now move forward to the minutes of the meetings referred to the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee meeting, and we're asked to receive the minutes of the Accounts and Risk Subcommittee meeting held on the 15th of September, which are included. Does anyone have any questions, comments, queries, problems with those minutes? No? Roger?
Chair, no problems whatsoever, but may I point out as chair of that committee, new chair of that committee, that we held our meeting after a gap into COVID. But more importantly, could I pay tribute to Bert for his many years of dedication on that subcommittee. I know his services were very much appreciated. And in particular latterly as chairman, I think it's worth recording that in both respects.
Thank you, Bert. And if anyone has served with him on this committee will know he has an unerring eye for detail and a knowledge going back a long time about some of the contracts we have and some of the suppliers we use. And that knowledge has been invaluable over the years. So I think we can all say thank you for that, Bert.
Chair, may I add that there are certain items in the minutes that don't routinely appear, haven't in the past, which we can perhaps come on later in the agenda pack as there are suggested amendments to the terms of reference.
Okay, thank you, Roger. There is one recommendation put forward by that subcommittee, and that will be discussed in agenda item 7.9 later on in this meeting. If we move on now to agenda item 7, officers' reports. If we take the first of those reports, which is the Forward Planner and Resolution Tracker, you will find them on pages 11 to 16 of your pack. The recommendation is to note and approve, subject to any comments or amendments, the Forward Planner, and note the Resolution Tracker and approve the removal of those resolutions marked complete. If we take the Forward Planner first, does anyone have any comments, queries or questions? Any comments, queries, issues with the Forward Planner? No? Okay, therefore, if I could see a show of hands, please, that we note and approve the Forward Planner. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we move on to recommendation 2.1.2. The Resolution Tracker is attached to Appendix B. We've been asked to note it and approve the removal of those resolutions marked complete. Does anyone have any comments on this item? No, we can move to a vote then, please. Can we note the resolution tractor and approve the removal, please? Can I see a show of hands? That's great, that's unanimous. Thank you. If we move on to agenda item 7.2, budgetary control, which you'll find on page 17. This report presents the actual expenditure and income position as at the 30th of September and outlines the main variances from the revised budget which was agreed at Council on the 18th of May. We have just been asked to note the report. Before we do that, does anybody have any questions? And before the questions, I would just like to make one comment that I'd like to thank officers present for the work that's gone in to essentially shoring up our finances and keep us as far as we can on track at this very, very difficult time. I'm sure we're one of the very few councils in the country that are not drifting far off their budget. The officers are doing everything they can to keep us on in a good financial position. So just a thank you to them. Any questions on this item? Any comments? No. Can I see a show of hands, please, that we have noted the report? Councillor Decourt, have you frozen? Councillor Decourt, have you frozen? It's fine. Show of hands. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Moving on then to agenda item 7.3. That was unanimous. If we could take that in the minutes. Agenda item 7.3, the budget for 2021-22. You will find this on page 21. We've been asked to review the draft budget and approve this committee, just the net budget for this committee. And we've asked to note this total staff cost for the whole council. You will see in this budget that predominantly the increases are not due to decisions made by councillors. They're predominantly due to just inflationary increases, I think, if you go through the items. So do I have any questions on the budget? Councillor Drake.
Thank you, Chair. I have two brief questions. The first one is how have we decided which items attract inflation and which ones do not? Because there's a number of items that it seems to me which have got no change, such as printing and stationery and so on. And I don't see why they will be treated any differently. That's my first question. And the second one's a really minor one, which is on page 27. Under latest forecast, town hall insurance is nil. Is that right for this year?
Okay. Who wants to take that? Mr. Cheevers and Mr. Williams?
Shall I say that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Daniel.
So regarding the inflation, what we've done with the budgets, it's looking at the actual contracts that we have and that are linked to inflation. So they're the budgets that have been increased. So the examples that you gave about the printing and stationery, it's more a case that those more has been put on officers to kind of get the same amount of stationery, even though the budget in real terms has actually been reduced. So there's been more pressure put on officers to kind of manage their budgets with remaining the same, rather than increasing all of those kinds of budgets in the same way as the management plan budgets have remained the same. So it's only the contracts that have actually been increased by inflation. Yeah. And then with the insurance side of things, it's I think it's just the differences between me and Paul, the way that we've apportioned the budget.
Okay.
and apportion the costs. That's the only difference with the insurance. So there's been no changes in the overall cost of the insurance. It's all there. It's just how it's been apportioned out.
Right. Thank you. It just looked a bit odd.
Okay, are you satisfied with those answers, Councillor Drew?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that there is a risk that we might be slightly understating expenditure dependent on inflation. However, I do accept that, you know, it isn't uncommon commercial practice to try and work within similar budgets. I've seen the same thing in commercial operations. At this stage, I think I'm happy with that, yes.
Okay. Councillor DeCourt, you had your hand up. You're still muted.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. That was wrong around. It's just on the staff costs generally. Obviously, as it's half the overall budget of the council roughly, and it's increasing in a different way to the others, which is because of our plans to increase the staffing for some of our ideas, including increasing commercial revenue. I thought it would be useful going forward if in that line below staff costs, we could have a full-time equivalent figure for the number of staff. So we and other members of the council, when it goes to full council, for example, can see that that is a decision that we've made to increase the staffing, or at least plan to.
I think, well, Daniel?
Yeah, that's right. I can add that in for the January report. I don't think that there's actually any change in the FTE between what's in the original budget this year and next year, but I could... Yeah,
Councillor DeCourt, I don't think we've increased staff. All that's happened is costs have gone up in line with inflation. Can you confirm that, please, Daniel?
Chair, can I just confirm that? So there isn't an increase in the number of staff, but the point in the budget at the moment is we have some staff who are on contracts who are currently being funded out of earmarked reserves. That earmarked reserve arrangement finishes in September next year. So the budget for next year has an increase to cover off in the general budget to cover off the funds that was previously covered by earmarked reserves. So there's no change in numbers of staff employed. However, the way in which it's funded needs to change in order to cover that off. The HR committee, when it meets in December, will be confirming the permanent arrangements, or be asked to confirm the permanent arrangements for the 2 contracted staff at the moment. So that's a matter that HR will look at. And then when this comes back to this committee in January, you'll get the full picture of everything that each committee is considered. And we can happily add that sort of detail at Councillor DeCourt, as mentioned there.
Yeah, thank you. Because I mean that line does increase by more than inflation. It's the difference. I'm sure other councils spotted that. And then in the full council, obviously, where they're more remote from this, they may also be asking a question about that. Which, when they see the full-time equivalent numbers change, they can see that that's what's driven it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Okay, can I then ask you if you wished to approve the net budget for this committee at £189,830. Can you have a show of hands, please? Those who... Okay. I think that's unanimous on agenda item 2.1.1. And to note the total staff cost for the whole council at £757,470. Can I see a show of hands for that, please? That's also unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we move on to agenda item 7.4, which you will find on page 29. This item is looking at the Harpenden Town Council website, and we've been asked to agree to the redesigning and updating of the current website to make it more user-friendly and to offer a more modern solution, and to agree to the tender document as set out in Appendix 1. Just first of all, I'd just like to say to officers that I think this is a timely exercise. People are becoming more and more dependent on virtual, seeing what we do virtually, particularly due to COVID. I think I would agree with what you were saying about the council website is quite elderly and is quite difficult to navigate and doesn't really reflect properly what we're doing. What we're effectively doing is making the best of a fairly old solution. So it's about time we did something about it. So first of all, I'll just ask colleagues, does anyone have any comments or queries on this? Nigel?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I don't know whether it possibly should be directed to the town clerk. Two questions. What's the likely cost of this going to be? And secondly, in which budget will the costs actually feature? Is it going to be significant enough it's going to feature as a large item in any budget that hasn't been allowed for or accounted for?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think it's fair to say at the moment we don't know what the costs are going to come back to from this tender. So what we're asking for is a tenderers to come back with a cost-effective solution, taking into account that we're a public body and we're utilising public funds. So what we wouldn't expect back is something that probably doesn't reflect the type of body that we are. It's difficult for us at the moment to really set out how much we think it's going to be. So part of this tender is actually a bit of an information gathering exercise as to see what it's going to cost. Now, clearly, at the moment, we are planning to fund this within our general budget, and we think that we've got a certain amount of money within our general budget to do that. But clearly, when the tenders come back, it will be for this committee ultimately to review the prices that have come in. And I'm hopeful that there's something in there at a reasonable price that we're happy with, that we're happy to move forward with. There is the risk that actually what comes back through this exercise is something is costing more than we are willing to pay. But that's just the way in which we have to work with our procurement. We're finding out that cost information through the tender exercise.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Bert?
In the end of the line had come on trying to refresh the site. The danger I think it might be, anything that's good is present in the website might be lost in the transition. Is there any sort of way of monitoring what we need to be there? Is retained on a good basis, or is it a complete new website? I'm thinking really of a district council website. I'm still getting used to it. I would like the old one. The new one to me is not so user friendly, but perhaps I'm old school. Thank you.
Yeah, so Chair, what we've done already is we've already done a content review of our website. So in the last probably 2 years now, we've scaled down a lot of the content that was on there. So there's still more for us to do, but what we've done ready for a future site is we've done a kind of a content map. So, and we've got all that saved as to the content we know that we're going to need that's on there at the moment that will be needed in the future. So that there's no chance of us losing anything. But in terms of the big issue with our website at the moment is one is functionality. There's limited things we can do with it. It kind of looks quite a bit old school, and that's because we can't really change much. And also there's the usability. So we've got some basic things that we can do on the website ourselves, but actually fundamental changes we have to go to our third-party provider. And so actually part of the key thing we want to be able to do in the future is have more flexibility, day to day, week on week, to make the changes we might want to do.
Okay, John?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions actually on the tender document itself on page 33. Firstly, paragraph 5, the client will write to the contractors at the conclusion of the tender process advising of our decision and its rationale. I'm not sure that actually giving them the reason why they're not getting the contract doesn't open an unnecessary debate. Certainly in my experience in business, if you just want to say to somebody you haven't won the contract, you can just say you haven't won the contract. but I don't know. That's something I'll have to be guided on. The second one is on part 11, award criteria. I just wondered, well, first of all, it seems to add up to 120%, 30% build, 30% maintenance, 60% creative information. I was less bothered about it not adding up, other than the basis upon which you decided on that criteria.
Carol?
Thank you, Chair, and that's a really good spot, that, Councillor Drake. Thank you very much. I always enjoy those errors. So, taking your first point about Section 5, so we in the public sector, we have to get a balance for our procurement of, we have to give feedback to suppliers or people that are bidding, and so we have to get a balance between giving enough information but not giving too much information. And with something like this, it's quite straightforward. So that's a fairly common clause we've got there.
Okay.
So, you know, for this one, the feedback might be just along the lines that the council preferred the design of alternatives and the cost was less, you know, for example. It could be as high level as that. I think it's fair to say that the more complex the tender and more complex and the higher the price, the more requirement there is for us to give the rationale for our decisions, because the higher the price, the more chance there is to get challenge from the suppliers who haven't been the preferred ones, which we do get sometimes, I think. So just quickly looking into the award criteria, so the 60% should be 40%. So that resolves the 120%. So that is a typo. Thank you for spotting that one. And really, the rationale behind the criteria is that we want to get a mix between the kind of points I made earlier. Really, we want something that is innovative. We want some examples of how we might actually produce more engaging content on our websites. But actually, it still needs to be a good price, and we still need the kind of the functionality of the maintenance and how it's hosted. So we feel like the balance across those three criteria gets us to that point. Historically, what we might have done, and you may have noticed on lots of our tenders that have gone through committee recently, we've actually tried to be a bit more creative with our criteria. So, for example, the Festive Lights contract, which was approved last week now, the tender, actually we moved away from that just being about price and previous experience. So we've been a bit more creative around sustainability and some other things. So we feel like the balance of those 3 points will give us a good mix of what we need, or a good indication of what we need from suppliers. And the crucial thing is, with any tender, just to take the opportunity to remind committee that we carry out an assessment, but we're not bound to go with anybody, nor are we bound to go with the contractor that might score the highest. You know, if there's something that, you know, our scoring and assessment is an indicator towards a decision. So quite often the highest scorer does get the award, but actually we've got flexibility within that, really. So hopefully that answers your points on there. And thank you, and apologies for the number error. It's always dangerous doing a number error to a finance committee, so I apologise for that.
Okay, Paul, and then Roger.
If that was me, I'd seen the same thing, page 33. I wanted to highlight that, so that's fine. Thank you.
I spotted that actually, but I knew why it happened. I thought I'd say nothing and get it sorted afterwards. Roger, you're muted. Roger, you're muted.
Usual problem, apologies, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I agree with everything you said, Chair, in your introduction, and everything the Town Clerk has said about the need for the new website, and it has to be more modern and flexible, etc., etc. Just dwelling on this creative innovation design 40%, I'd caution against putting too much emphasis on creativity. Bearing in mind we are a public body, people mainly will come to the website for information or direction. The target audience is not teenagers who are playing computer games. And I've seen instances in the past where websites that become too innovative, too sexy, as it were, and they just fall over in terms of some of the basics. So I'd caution against the 40 there and suggest a slight reweighting, because what we want is something that's well built, reliable, does its basic jobs, and is appealing to the majority of the population, many of whom accessing the site will actually be at the older, not the younger end of the age scale. Thank you, Chair.
Melanie, I think you've got something to say.
Sorry, I do disagree with that last comment. I think there is a lot of people at the younger spectrum of the age center that are actually taking much more interest in the town council, and there is a youth committee, and I think it's great. I think it's overdue. I think the website is a bit clunky. I really support this. Sorry, that's all. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'd just like to make one comment, which may bring us together, Roger. You can have one of the key things about this website is the ability to navigate it and find information quickly. That's a massive problem with the district council website. Nobody can ever find anything. And if they can put their innovation into things like that, I think the innovation's not in having WYSIWYG graphics or anything like that. It's about how the website can be used quickly, effectively by people who don't understand the public sector and they just want to find things quick. So that's where the innovation needs to come in. Rosemary? Mute, Rosemary.
We're all suffering from muteness tonight. I'm going to say, I think this is very timely because it really does need some sorting out. And one of the issues that I think particularly needs to be addressed, which I'm pleased to see will be, is keeping it fully up to date, which can be achieved if we can go in and deal with it entirely ourselves, because there are elements of the website at present with information on things like community and that sort of thing, which are, some of them are very out of date and do not get updated very often.
Yeah, you were going to say something, Carl?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reflect back on Councillor Butterworth's point about the kind of creative thing. So that third bullet point is really the functionality criteria. So what we want the tenderers to do is we want them to demonstrate how creative and innovative their web platform that they would provide to us would be in order to demonstrate the functionality of it. So it would always be down to the council to decide what the content looks like, what the design looks like. So that criteria is actually them being creative to demonstrate functionality. So rather than, I don't know, a basic WordPress site, which has limited design and innovative opportunities, they might be putting forward something that's a bit creative. But to take Councillor Butterworth's point, we will have the final say over what the design looks like. This is just a way to generate a showcase for what the functionality could do on that bullet point.
Okay, any other comments on this item? Bert?
Yeah, for Carl, actually, what do we actually get back? Do we get a complete dummy website, obviously not uploaded for us to look at, or are we just getting ideas and innovations?
Yeah, so Chair, so what we're asking back is kind of some design ideas, really. So we've left it open to tenderers to come back. We're not specifically asking them to create something in particular. Some of them may well go out of their way to create a dummy site or a couple of pages. Others, it might be in, I don't know, a presentational form, really. But we're asking them to provide us with a design proposal that showcases the functionality of what their offering is.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, then we'll go to the recommendations. The first suggested recommendation is that we agree to the redesign and updating of the current Harpenden Town Council website to make it more user-friendly and to offer a more modern solution. Can I see a show of hands on that, please? Yep. We're broken out in unanimity tonight, so let's say yes. And 2.1.2, agree to the tender document as set out in Appendix A. Yep. So Rosemary? Yeah, oh yeah, she's put her that. So we have agreement on both of those. Thank you. And we'll move on to agenda item 7.5, which you'll find on page 43 of your pack. And this is the internal audit plan for 2020-21, which will be undertaken by the appointed independent auditor, Shared Internal Audit Services. We have been asked to approve the internal audit plan. Any questions, queries? Nigel?
Yes, thanks, Chair. One item, I'm looking at page 46, under item 8, payroll records. It says here, staff pay is accurate and approved by members. Now, I don't believe council members actually approve payroll. They don't see individual pay records, salary details, do they? Surely.
No, they don't.
So that's wrong.
We see the consolidated figure, but we don't see the broken down figure.
Well, it does say staff pay is accurate and approved by members. We can't.
Carol?
We can't have that responsibility.
Dan, have you got any comments on that one?
Sorry. I'm just trying to think on that. When the payment runs are kind of, they're all approved, but it's not, as you say, it's not the detail of any salary payments, but the overall payments for the payroll and the pensions and the VAT, and the tax, sorry, not VAT, they all go through, but are all approved in that way. So I think that's what it's referring to rather than any of the detail.
Well,
Are you referring to the process by which staff pay is paid out rather than the actual level of pay? Could it be that we've got in place policies?
So yeah, so Chair, just by kind of way of an example, just to try and maybe bring that point to life. So, for example, in previous years, what we've asked to be provided to the auditors as part of this process is confirmation of when, say, an officer has gone up to a salary point, or where there's been an internal promotion. So what we've had to provide previously is where HR committee has provided resolutions that have had an impact on an employee's pay. So, for example, last time round, I think it was last time round, maybe it's all blurred, maybe it was the year before, but last time round, I'm pretty sure they queried the point I made earlier on around those individuals that are on secondment or temporary promotion. So if you take the maintenance team leader, in year, his salary increased because he went from being a maintenance officer to a team leader. Now, the audit guys, as part of that, checking whether staff pay is accurate, picked that up in their records that we provided them and asked us to provide the resolution from the relevant committee or the urgent decision that backed up that change. So I think that's what that is bringing to life, because those changes are approved by members, normally through the HR committee or through the annual budget setting process.
Okay, thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I've heard what the town clerk has said and the finance manager as well. Personally, I think Councillor Turnbull's reading of the words there is unnecessarily restrictive. I don't think the words used imply that the pay of every individual member of staff is approved by all the councillors. I think that's not what the words mean. I think, in effect, there's a process for ensuring that staff are paid what they're supposed to be paid, and that is approved in some way by or on behalf of members in accordance with the sort of hierarchy of approvals. And I wouldn't myself think we need to alter the wording here. I think it's wide enough to cover what we actually do.
It goes back to what I said. I think it's about the process by which people get increases. and the process by which they move jobs. Yeah. Now the reality is that that is often set by the town clerk, but when people move jobs, it's agreed. The rate for jobs is set through national agreements, and the level at which a job is set by the town clerk, and is agreed when a new job is defined through the HR committee, and then anyone who is moved is approved by the HR committee. So I suspect what you're talking about here is the process by which it happens rather than monthly check runs. Yeah. Are the words clear enough, or should you put in approve the staff pay policy and processes?
Chair, I'm happy to leave it. I merely, when I read it, I actually marked it and I went back to read it again. And my initial reading is it can be read as they're supposed to see the payroll.
Yeah.
We're supposed to see the salary records that they are paid the right salary, etc., etc. But I'm happy to withdraw my comments.
Yeah. Okay, but you may think about that, Carol and Daniel, just to make it a little bit clearer. Yeah. Okay. If any other comments, Roger, you had your hand up, but did you make your comment, or did you have anything else?
That was it. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to recommendation 2.1. We have been asked to approve the internal audit plan for 2020-21 as set out in Appendix A. Can I see a show of hands, please, that we have approved it? Yep, I think that's unanimous. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7.6, which we'll find on page 47. This is our membership of the National Association of Local Councils and Hertfordshire Association of Parish and Town Councils. I'd just like for us to say that how valuable this membership has been historically, both in terms, in 3 areas really, training for officers, training for councillors, and advice and help and guidance for officers as they deal with certain difficult issues. It's also extremely useful for keeping in contact and getting best practice from what's happening around the country and the county. So we've always been happy to stay part of these organisations because of that. So the membership is at a cost of £3,215.23. And we've got a further recommendation that this doesn't continually come up, that it will just happen automatically unless it's raised by this committee. If the committee begins to feel we're not getting value from this membership. So I'd just like to ask, does anybody have any comments on this? We'll start with Bert, because I caught you first.
I guess it's a message for Carl, really. I know we're so used to every year agreeing the increase. I can see the rationale for not doing it in the future, but at the end of the day, is it quite legal for us to just keep us in the long grass and just keep paying an increased amount each year without any member involvement?
Yeah, Chair. So essentially what we're saying in terms of not bringing this forward every year in its own right, you would, of course, any increase will come forward as part of your earlier item every year around the budgetary setting for the following year. So it would appear within there as a kind of an inflationary one. So, but the reason why we're suggesting not having this every year is that we have other subscriptions that we don't bring to committee every year that continue to carry on. So this is just bringing that in line with there. There's no, if committee wants to see this every year, we can happily do that. I think, Chair, as you mentioned, if I can make some of my own reflections on it, I think historically the local element, the HAPTC bit of it, has always been incredibly valuable. and it's almost part of our duty as one of the town councils to be part of that body in many ways, as being one of the largest councils in that network. We do get a lot from it as well, in particular some training and that kind of connection with others. I must say, my personal view in terms of the National Association, there are myself and a few colleagues in other large towns who are growing very frustrated with NAUC, and they are putting themselves in a very position where we start to ask the question, what value do we get out of NAUC for a council of our size? So it's very difficult for them because they've got a wide membership. They've got 10,000 town and parishes across the country. Majority of those are very small. So actually a lot of their campaigns benefit the smaller councils as opposed to some of the larger ones. So, you know, we're watching that carefully, and I think if there is a point in the future that we are really as officers uncomfortable with what we're getting from NAUC, we would bring that as a committee item. The important thing to say is we can't be a member of HAPTC without being a member of NAUC. So the recommendation this evening would be very different if we could separate the two out, because my recommendation would likely for you to consider the NAUC element of it, but we're not in that position at the moment. As I say, myself and some colleagues are doing some lobbying with NAUC, and we're hopeful over the next 12 months we're going to see a bit of change of emphasis. You know, really hopeful for that. You know, on the off chance someone's watching this video from NAUC, that'll be hopefully they might be hearing this message now as well. You never know.
Hey, Rosemary.
You could probably see me grinning, having sat on HPTC for years, but I'm not on it now. There's been a problem with NAUC for years and years and years, and they say they change and they don't, but hopefully they might do. But actually, Carl said what I was going to stick my hand up and say is, of course, the issue is really that you can't belong to one without the other, and HAPTC is a valuable source. So I would think probably something to think long and hard about and to see where it goes with NAUC. Carl, I can't remember, how is the split between that amount we paid? How much of it goes to NAUC?
So Rosemary, if you look at paragraph 4.1, I think we've split it out in there, so it's not far off.
Yes.
Yeah, so
silly me, I'd forgotten you'd written it down. Yes.
Yeah, so it's not too it's almost 50-50, isn't it? Not a million miles away.
Sorry, Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, nice to see I'm not the only one with a problem with the mute button. As a relatively new councillor, can I say I have no knowledge of NAUC, but I've attended 3 HAPTC training events, 2 face-to-face and 1 virtual, and I do read their weekly emails, and I can well see that they are a very valuable body to belong to. And frankly, if their subscription were the 3,000 and we didn't have to pay for NAUC, I'd still say it was worth paying. So I'm for myself very happy continuing with this, and very happy that in effect the decision is delegated to the town clerk for future years at the detailed level. I would also say that given possible unitarization, or whatever the correct verb is, being a member of a body where other councils who might be similarly affected are also members, particularly the local one, Hertfordshire, is probably a good thing, because although we may be one of the larger parish councils with our proper title, it's good to be in close contact with others on a networking basis, official and informal. So I certainly very much approve of this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, if there isn't, we can move on to the recommendations. We've been asked to approve the renewal of the membership of NAUC and HAPTC for 2021-22 at a cost of £3,215.23. Can I see a show of hands, please? Okay, that's unanimously agreed. And 2.2, this report will not be presented unless the council decides to unsubscribe. Can I see a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, moving on. Agenda item 7.7, Citizens Advice Update on page 49. I have a query on this. I have looked at the report. Now, historically, there was an issue with Citizens Advice reporting. They were asked to provide information about Harpenden, and what they actually did was they provided information about the district. They took the proportion of residents in Harpenden as a percent of the proportion of residents in the district, and then they prorated the information on the number of clients and the number of issues across the whole of St Albans, and prorated it based on resident proportions, and then presented that as the Harpenden figures. Unfortunately, we had been taking account at the same time of the number of clients, and we found, and that was why we knew the figures were inaccurate. I am concerned looking at these figures on two reasons, and I would like, I know that we are looking at a relationship with Citizens Advice, and that will come forward either, I think it's January, but I'd like before January that concern to be taken into account, because if you look at the number of clients, well, the first is, it shows key statistics in Albans member. So why is it titled that? If you look at the spread, east, north, south, west, is biased towards east, but I'm kind of surprised at that spread, knowing what it's been historically. And there isn't, if you look at the summary figures and the issues figures, and you look at the clients on both of them, that should match, and it doesn't. So I would ask officers if they could please look into the basis of these statistics, where they're getting them from, and whether they are estimates or whether they're actual figures. So, Carol, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, Chair. So I think certainly what you talk about there goes back quite a long time now, doesn't it? I think, and what we've been making sure in this 3-year agreement is that isn't the case, and we are told that the figures that are presented to us are actual figures and not estimates. And so where they present, for example, here 27 clients from Harpenden East, that is based upon the records that they have for the clients that they are seeing. So we can only we continue to ask that question, and they continue to tell us that these are accurate figures rather than estimates of an overall number. The point that, in terms of the issues won't necessarily add up in numbers, because obviously some people can present with multiple issues. So you might have. No,
but they've got the clients. They're double counting. They have it's about a 35% spread, and the number of clients they're showing under issues and the number of clients they're showing under summary.
Yeah. So we can.
Why has that happened?
We can
Are they double counting clients?
Yeah, we can clarify things like that. So the point that I would point councillors to and committee to in the new year, when you consider what happens next with this, is my concern, and my concern that I've probably set out at the start of this 3-year agreement, is that Citizens Advice are operating out of the hub in St Albans, and for example, say they were seeing 100 people. I'll make it easy for myself. Say they were seeing 100 people from Harpenden in the hub in St Albans. When we part of the rationale of setting up the new outreach service was in Harpenden was that actually people from Harpenden didn't have to travel as far, therefore they could see more people from Harpenden. Now my concern was, and still is, that actually we might now be seeing 50 people in the Harpenden outreach, but actually the number of people from Harpenden that are going to the hub might also now be 50. So in fact, all we're doing is we're not necessarily getting them to support more Harpenden people, but the danger is we're creating capacity at their St Albans hub to help people from across the district. So that is my concern that still remains with this. And
I also have a concern that they've created a hub in Harpenden, which has been used by people from Luton. Because one of the things that I have been told by anybody from Citizens Advice, people on the ground at things like Citizens Advice and at food banks, is that often people will not go to their own area for advice. They go somewhere else because they don't want to be seen using it. Yeah. Now, if they can track how many Harpenden people are being supported by Citizens Advice, which they should, because they take name addresses, they should know, and where those people actually go for help, that would be quite useful.
Yeah, Chair, so they've been upfront right from the start in that they wouldn't turn anyone away that came to the Harpenden outreach that was from another area. So, you know, they were very open from the start. So that wasn't a restriction. And so the figures that they present to us here, so the 87 clients, actually the people that might have come through from into the Harpenden outreach might have been more than that, but those are the Harpenden residents that they're reporting. So there are lots of grey areas.
That's my concern. Are we absolutely sure of that? If you went in and said, I'd like to see this quarter's figures, would they be able to drill down and demonstrate that?
Well, Chair, these are the quarters figures that they provided. So
yeah,
we asked them for them, and I guess, you know, there's not really any way in which we can verify that beyond them saying these are the actual figures. You know, we can still have the concerns, of course. Committee can still have the concerns, but these we asked for the Harpenden outreach figures and the clients that are supported through that, the issues that they're coming forward with, and some of the demographics, and this is what they provide us. So, yeah.
Okay. Any queries, Roger?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously we do need to be sure that the figures we're presented with are the correct representation. Obviously we're dealing with public money and we need to be responsible about it. But we also need to understand the context, especially in the current year with all that's been going on. Government-funded legal aid for these sort of civil queries disappeared many years ago, and lawyers providing this sort of advice on a pro bono basis is a very scarce resource. So I'm sure there is a need, but as you're saying, we need to be sure that the need is in the town where we are providing the support and is not something where we're subsidising elsewhere. But now would not be a good time optically to be seen to be in any way downgrading this, but of course that's not what you're proposing. You're simply proposing that it be properly scrutinised and audited, which I obviously agree with. Thank you, Chair.
All I'm saying is that we need to be absolutely sure the figures we've been giving are accurate, because they've not been accurate in the past. Melanie?
Sorry, am I now not on mute? Yeah, I would like to support Councillor Butterworth's comments. I think this is a very valuable service for very many people. I see almost 240 issues, which is roughly £20 per issue that we're supporting. I think their breakdown of their data is actually quite detailed. And I really worry that this is something that people need, and this is something people are going to need more. So I think I would like them to focus on actually supporting people. And for me, this is more than enough data for...
Melanie, I don't think we're not saying anything about getting more detailed information. We just want to be sure it's accurate.
I
We
don't
want to
see
be sure
anything
it's
to
actually
suggest why
measuring.
it's not. I
Because
mean, I might have missed
provided
this,
this
but I
detail in
really
the
don't
past,
see
which
it.
hasn't been. And we are controlling public money, and we have to be absolutely assured that the public money is going where it should be.
I agree to that, but it's also, we control public money. We have a budget of almost 1.5 million of public money. That's what we do. This is a small bit, and I think that what they do to me is enough. That's all I'm saying.
Well, they give us a lot of information, but is the information accurate? And
I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be.
We have because they've given us inaccurate information in the past, Melanie. And so we just need to check. Paul?
I would just like to talk about the scale of this. I personally would not wish any resources of the Citizens Advice Bureau being put towards auditing what will be small sums of money to people in need of it anyway. I wouldn't want to take away from that to see whether the figures are exactly accurate or not. It's public money, but it's being spent on the public.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, who else is it being spent on?
We're asking.
Sorry, who else is it being spent on?
This money has been spent for Harpenden residents, and that's all we're asking. Is it being spent on Harpenden residents? And they have systems, and they should be able to support that very readily.
We have heard from the town clerk that we know some of it isn't being spent on Harpenden residents, and it's accepted that's the case.
No,
so I don't know why we need to check that.
We've asked. The town clerk has said that he's not sure because they're not giving us. I mean, and I think he needs to ask. We do not. We should not be spending money from Harpenden residents on things not in Harpenden. You don't spend money outside your area. So, any other comments? Queries? Okay. So if I could ask for that information to be brought in January as part of the debate on the renewal of the contract, and the recommendation is that we note the report. Can I see a show of hands about noting the report? Right, thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, if we move on to agenda item 7.8, we've been asked to review Harpenden Town Council's health and safety policy and propose any alterations, if any, are required, and approve the health and safety policy along with any necessary alterations if there are any to be made. Does anyone have any comments on this? No? It feels just like yesterday we did it last time. So any queries, comments? No? Okay, if I go to recommendation 2.1.1, can I see a show of hands that we've reviewed it? And that's unanimous. And can I see a show of hands that we approve the health and safety policy? Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's also unanimous. Okay, finally, agenda item 7.9, which you will find on page 81. And there have been some proposed changes to the terms of reference for the Accounts and Risk Subcommittee. Are there any comments on this agenda item? No? Mr. Cheevers?
Yes, Chair. I think, Dan, you just want to point out one amendment that needs to just to clarify one amendment that Councillor Butterworth flagged to us earlier on.
Yeah, so apologies, just to say that paragraph 3.4.3 isn't actually reflected in the appendix on page 84. So I'll need to make that amendment in the final terms of reference.
Okay, thanks for that, Daniel. Okay. Any other comments on this? I think it's fairly clear. Roger?
Just for completeness in relation to review of expenditure, not only does the change reflect, which perhaps has been past practice anyway, to disregard items individualised below £500, but the schedules which are reviewed by the committee do not cover staff costs, and that is because the publicity that's required for expenditure generally of £500 does not include staff costs for pretty obvious reasons. That's not a change to the terms of reference, that's just the way things are, in case anyone was wondering, and specialists referred to staff costs earlier in this meeting. They are not reviewed by this subcommittee.
Okay, right. Okay, if there's no comments or queries, can I ask if you're minded to approve the proposed changes 3.4.1 to 3.4.3 shown below, which was recommended by the Accounts and Risk Subcommittee, and note the comment 3.4.4. Show of hands, please. Yep, okay, I think that's unanimous. And I don't believe there is any exempt business. So at 20:31, I think we're finished for tonight. Thank you all, colleagues, for your comments and your suggestions.